Oh,
I think we may be. I think we may be live.
I think so too.
Yeah.
We're certainly not dead.
Not this minute. Let's hope it doesn't happen
Okay, all
live.
right, all right.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Hopefully, some of our folks will tell us that they're
Yeah.
here in the comments so that we can see it. And I
So,
don't know.
yeah. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, boa tarde.
That's awesome. What time is it for you, Oz?
It is 11 a.m. in
Okay.
Portland, Oregon.
All right. It is
Yes.
1 p.m. in Birmingham, Alabama. Is it pretty there?
Oh, yeah. That's why I live here.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
So let's see. Oh yeah, I see
Robert
people.
Robinson. All right. Good
Yeah.
afternoon,
Okay,
Rebecca.
awesome. We can't really watch LinkedIn while we're live on it. I mean, I guess we could if we wanted to, but
Uh,
yeah, but at least we know it's broadcasting, so awesome.
Yeah. All right. And here we are with Relentless Analyst Podcast, the second episode. And we're going to talk a bit about what?
We're going to talk about databases and or spreadsheets, all of the above.
All of the above. All right. All right. And one thing that I want to get into is, when do you truly have to be in a database? And as you described earlier, the line is thin and blurry.
Yeah.
I want to find out, where are we past that blurry point?
Okay.
Jabbar, hey, thank you. So, all right. And nephew Sean Tom Ryan is here. All right.
Oh yeah, we see it. We
So,
see it. I love how he calls you Uncle Oz.
right, yeah, cause a couple videos I did, cause I take the uncle approach, right? I don't just talk about tips and tricks. I am the uncle that says, look here, there's the right way to do things, and then there's the way to get stuff done and stay out of trouble.
Yeah, okay.
And they're not
Okay.
always the same. And I'm the uncle that says, okay, sometimes you got to be over here.
No, okay.
All right. So that's where that comes from. All right.
Are you the
So,
uncle? Are you also the uncle we call in the middle of the night if we're in trouble?
no,
Don't
no,
answer. Don't
no,
answer. Yeah,
no.
so
You
in
come over to the cigar lounge and sit down and have a cigar and ask me those questions.
I love it.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, I was pretty interested in us talking about this as well, just simply because like I'm a crossover. I love Excel,
Mm-hmm.
longtime user fan of it, and I also love databases. I love to design databases, large scale, small scale. I mean, I really don't know. I think at some point when I realized how to join data together,
Mm-hmm.
then there was really no data system that I could not work with. So I could
Okay.
figure out how to tie data. I could write tables to serve as bridges between data sets and really just come up with something that didn't exist and turn it into a database.
Mm-hmm.
But I use a lot of spreadsheets as well. And because of the customers we serve, sometimes the answer is, okay, we need to put this in a database. Sometimes the answer is we need to leverage Excel. So again, it really does. The line is very blurry and it is very thin.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of decisions in and around it. So
So let me ask you. Okay, so we know Excel and spreadsheets, and we got the formulas and the pivot tables. Now we got Power Query and Power Pivot and all these different things.
mhm.
So, what can you call a database? Because then there's a formal database, and then there is how people use Excel. And one thing is, you using Excel like it's a database, and it's not a database. But what does it mean to use it like a database? And can a spiral notebook be considered a database?
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, your ability to query it's kind of limited, and you have to use
Okay.
your fingertips and your eyeballs. But I mean,
Okay.
yeah, really, any collection of information you could almost call a database. But like in the traditional sense, a database is um, an object that has table or tables that
Hmm.
are connected or not connected that capture data, hold that data, and then we use tools to query that data. And the tools to query data is vast. Um,
So
you know,
that sounds like Excel even before
mhm,
Power Query and the joins,
mhm,
because you got tables of data that can be connected via VLOOKUPs or index match, um, or even just flipping back and forth manually.
yeah, yeah,
So, what is formally a database? And let me say, when I think database, I think about the guy who introduced me to databases. He had maybe four computer monitors and all his code.
okay,
And then this prompt would come up and he would type this stuff so that it would capture stuff from different tables that I could not see. The concept of tables took me a long time to get, um, because I had to imagine them. I couldn't see them like I could see in Excel.
okay, okay.
So database has me thinking of this guy with all these monitors typing stuff into this prompt, and then some report would print out.
Okay. That is not how I see
Okay,
databases.
all right.
So I see databases. All right, let me give you an example. So, all right, so you've got your Excel file and it's full of sheets, and you go put a table on that sheet and you pull it in Power Query.
Hmm.
And then you have another sheet, it's got another set of information that you might need to relate. And if you don't know how to do Power Query, you do VLOOKUPs.
Hmm.
Okay. And if you know how to do Power Query, you create another table, you pull it in, and you join them together. So they're like two little data sets
Hmm.
together. So to me, databases are nothing more than a bunch of collected data sets that,
Okay.
if designed relationally, should be able to communicate and talk with each other and join together. When I think about databases, I think of tools like Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle databases, even Access data. I love Access databases, although we'll talk about how people hate them. So
Hmm.
yeah, any collection of data sets. It's just so happens to be that most human beings have some form of spreadsheet program on their uh, setup, and most systems that we use export out to either Excel directly or CSV, and Excel reads that data, but that data lives in a database somewhere stored in tables. So how I cut my teeth on database technologies, I was required to teach Access databases, and
Hmm.
I had already been teaching Excel spreadsheets, as I was asked to add Access databases into my life. And shout out to my BFF Michael Howard, who was tasked with teaching me joins. And I
Hmm.
would look at him and go, I'm going to need another example. Can you give me
Yeah.
another example? Like, why do I care? And like, why do I care about this? But then he gave me an example and it unlocked something in my brain.
Yeah.
And then
Joins a killer. Yeah.
there are killer, but they're critical analysis concept or
Yes.
data tie. So anyway, once I figured out how to join data together, I was like, wait a minute. Then the next level for me was, okay, well, okay, so here's the story. My first automation, and I'll be brief. So I worked at a company, and I think they figured out pretty quickly I could do a lot with the data. And
Hmm.
so we had this schedule that had to be maintained all the time. And they would come to me, and it was in a Word document, and they would come to me and be like, "Hey, Robin, can you update the schedule? Hey, Robin, can you update the schedule?" And it was like, okay, I'm teaching day in, day out, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And I would have 15 minutes in the morning for a break, 15 minutes in the afternoon, and I would have lunch. And so, they would come to me on break, they would come to me on lunch, they'd come to me afternoon break. They're like, "Can you update the schedule? Can you update?" I was like, okay, but we had this system. And I
Hmm.
was like, everything we need to know is in this system. So if I can get it out of the system, then I can put it into tables, And then I can use an access report that the admin at the front desk can run on demand
Mm-hmm.
so that they will stop. Like I had one guy, he would chase me to the bathroom. He would literally stand outside the bathroom door and be like, Robin, can you, when you get out of there, will you update the schedule? And I'm like, I'm in the bathroom.
Mm.
Leave me
Oh man.
alone. So I figured out how to get all that data out of that system, and they wouldn't let me connect to it directly.
Right.
So when we talk about limitations of access to information, I could not get to the back end. So I would export all the tables out, and then I wrote a routine that I could, export it out to one location and read all of those data dumps into an access database. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would join them together in relationships, and then I could spit out that report. And
Right.
I never had anybody ever ask me again for the schedule because the front desk could run it. I would just like go here, do this, run it. And they had a live, fresh schedule all the time. And at that point,
But
I was like, that changed my life because I got my breaks back. So,
okay, this sounds a lot like my path with Excel. And at some point, let's take some time to look at the chats because a lot of interesting things
okay.
happening there. But yeah, my path was needing data, needing it on demand, and um, I needed access to the company database. And
Mm,
my director arranged for that. But I learned to get data dumps out of the company database and bring it into Excel.
hmm.
When I sat down with that guy to learn what he did so that my director could get reports when he needed them and not have to wait 3, 4 days for Charles.
Right.
Um, but I sat down with him and then he starts typing all these commands. After a while, I just tuned out. I didn't know what the hell he was doing, but I did capture enough to where I could get to the prompt and I could say which table I wanted to pull data from and which fields I wanted. And I knew I was going to get way more than I needed, but I
Hmm.
could see it and I could delete it in Excel.
Yep.
Um, but what he would do is say, "Oh, we already have a report that's kind of like what you want." So I'm gonna pull up that report and then type all this stuff to modify it a bit, and then boom, go to the printer and there's this thing. I wasn't gonna learn all that, but I learned to get my data dumps, and so that's been a frustration for me is thinking about in Excel. I can kind of fiddle around.
Hmm.
I can
Yeah.
go over here or open another sheet or get something kind of working and then go over here and see if I can do something to it. But then with databases, there's no fiddling around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have to, and I'm hearing myself back. So I hope that, I don't know if that's on my side
No,
or,
you sound fine to me.
okay.
Oh, here.
So access to data is a challenge for everybody, right?
Hmm.
And then you also have to understand that our protectors, our data governance teams, our DBAs, their role is to protect access to the database because there's information out there that they're trying to protect. So I
Hmm.
get that. So we do have limitations in our business users when they can't just go directly tap the back end of a database.
Right.
So, and I've worked in tons of organizations, regulated, not regulated, small, large, everything in between. And so I've seen every flavor of that. So I guess part of what I hope we can accomplish here is maybe you're not recreating a database for the company to use. Maybe you are leveraging database technologies to help you perform your job. So in my example I was given earlier, it's not that the company wanted a database, they had the database. Like if I'd
Okay.
have gone and said, "Hey, we could do so much more with this if we changed this archaic database over to, this new fancy database I create," they would have laughed at me. So I use database technology to solve a specific problem I was having and that the salespeople were having, which is having a schedule that the canned reports, like what you're talking about, just didn't serve that purpose. That's the other thing
Mhm.
too. Like when people build database systems, they come with these reports that are on deck and they're great, but you can't come up with every single report you're ever going to need. You need the ability to customize those reports.
Whew.
It's a lot. It's a
Yeah, there's a
lot.
lot. There's a lot because we
Yeah.
had a very expensive offsite consultant when I needed a new report. Call Paul. Paul said I talked with Paul about what we need, and then I got to transfer him to my director to tell Paul, so Paul can tell him how much it's going to cost. And then my director comes back and says, never mind, Paul is going to cost too much. But then you get into things like um, Salesforce, which is supposed to be easy for ad hoc reporting. And I have been a user of Salesforce. And yes, it can be easy for reporting, but then it is hell getting that thing configured.
Yeah.
So, should we look at some of these questions and see?
Yeah, I was just
Oh,
gonna throw this out here. Like
okay,
my
throw it out.
yeah, because I
I'm gonna
like
catch it.
everybody's got a Paul, right? Everybody's
Yeah,
got that Paul they can call on that's gonna cost a gazillion dollars for something that you need in 10 minutes or 10 minutes ago and should be a pretty easy lift considering you see all the data on the screen. So everybody's got a Paul, right?
mm-hmm.
And in some cases I'm somebody's Paul and that's fine. My personal approach has always been if you can get access to the data either just simply from an export, then we can solve your problem.
Mm-hmm.
And we can solve it in several different ways, just depending on what's the most appropriate tool. So, first of all, if you've heard me speak before, you know I'm tools agnostic. I don't really care. I'm going to use what I feel like is the right tool for your budget and what your outcomes are going to be. Um,
That's important.
yeah.
Your outcomes and your budget. Yeah, I would add the skill. But anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, one thing that I worry about with our business users is that they are performing database type actions all the time, but they do not understand that what they're actually doing in a database, if they were using a database, was actually they're querying and they're joining data. So
Mm-hmm.
in our brief, one of the things that we have is so FYI, our speakers brief is something we do in preparation for any talk we have. But like, when do you make the decision to go from a spreadsheet to a database? And I tried to come up with some practical
Okay.
questions or triggers for me. And so one of those is when you do a million VLOOKUPs. So if you're a person that you get data from wherever you get it from, don't care where, and you're doing a ton of VLOOKUPs, what you're really doing is you're joining tables of information together and you're limiting yourself to a left outer join. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that people might have to chew on. Whereas in queries, if you had those in two tables, you would just join them one time and they're joined forever. Another thing is people will silo their information into spreadsheets, right? So this spreadsheet tool, it captures information for, let's just say, said project, right? And
Okay.
then another project comes along. You've got two of these spreadsheets and they're like literally identical, but one is this project, one is this project. And then you get another one and you get another one and
Yeah.
you get another one. And when you have to cross report, because somebody's going to
Mm-hmm.
say, no, I don't need to just see what's going on in that one project. I need to see what's going on in all five projects. And
Yeah.
they're all in five separate spreadsheet solutions. Then you probably wish you had some type of database component involved in that.
Okay.
And the biggest thing that makes me not say implement a database, but leverage database technologies, and this could be Power Query, and I'll give you an example of that in a minute, is when you have to update information in 1,000 different places and it's like literally the same piece of information. So I was talking to a good contact of mine at a company called Silver Ships, and they've got a parts list, and that part might show up in 25 or 30 different places. And when the part number changes or the price of that part changes, they have to go and actually update it in 25 or 30 places. But if it were stored in a database, they could update it. Or if they were leveraging database technology, they could update it in one place and spit it out to everywhere.
Okay.
So those are some of those like easy triggers that most of you, if you're working in Excel all the time, you can possibly relate to.
Yeah, yeah. Because and everything you mentioned, I'm thinking about better spreadsheet design, where somebody's created a bad spreadsheet and they've got to update the same thing 15 different places, and then they're going to forget one, and then everything goes to hell. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Well, in that
jo-
in that so yeah, in that case, so last night talking with that individual and looking at like ways to suggest, like, again, because it's confidential information, I can't look at all of their
right.
guts, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's like if you could leverage a tool like Power Query
Hmm.
and you have some consistent naming in there, you can not just go throw the whole solution away, but you can take the database technology that we get from Power Query by creating data sets and appending and generating more data sets and using referencing to be able to make that update in one place and spit it out
Right.
everywhere. So one thing I want to get across is it's not so much I'm saying let's go have databases all over the earth. I'm
Hmm.
saying our people need to understand how databases work, and they need to understand simple database technologies like access databases, because if they can unlock how a database is structured, then they can learn how to implement and know which tool to choose for whatever project or problem they're actually trying to solve. But there are definitely some pros and cons to databases and even spreadsheets. So,
Yeah. So let's look at some questions and
okay,
let's see. So Faraz G, hello, hello. Let's see, we've got somebody from Nairobi here, Robert Robinson. I want to drive down to New Mexico sometime. I want to take a good road trip. We got Robert Robinson, Reggie White. Hello.
let's see. I've got one here
Okay.
from Abe. Hello, Abe. What's up? All right. Would a database be good for a sports apparel company? I want to learn how to build databases for this company. I'm doing business analyst work for. I'm assuming
Yeah,
is
that's
what you
what I'm
mean by
thinking.
BA
Business
there.
analyst. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, because like, could you put all your t-shirts and apparel and goods in a spreadsheet? Yes, you can. Can you do a lot with that in a spreadsheet solution? Yes, you can. Can you do everything that you could do with it that if it were in a database you could do? No. Like at some point there is this spot where the spreadsheet becomes, you grow too big and the spreadsheet is no longer a viable solution. And I think that's a key indicator too. Like we used to do it this way, we had 5 people and 10 customers. Now all of a sudden we've got 25 people and 1,000 customers. Maintaining all that information in a spreadsheet, yeah, could you do it? Yes, but could you get more out of it if you threw it into a database? Yeah, likely.
Okay. So, man, it goes in so many different directions.
Hmm.
Okay. Because I want to find out, when do you truly need to have a database? Because um, I've worked with the smaller companies that are doing everything in spreadsheets, and things do get clumsy and mistakes do get made. But then, like the nonprofit that begs for funding to get a database, and then they got to go beg some volunteer to get it set up and run it. But they've got spreadsheets.
Yeah, I mean,
When is it a point where you tell these people, this piece, this nonprofit is going to fall into a deep hole if you don't get a database? They've gone from clumsy but good enough, and now they're in peril?
yeah. Oh my goodness. I think when your data gets well, first of all, I don't like to use the word big data because a lot of people think their data is big and it's not. And that's a
Mm.
moving big data is a moving
Yeah,
target.
yeah, it is.
Okay, but if you've got 100,000 records in an Excel spreadsheet, okay, and you're trying to maintain 100,000 records in an Excel spreadsheet, your machines, most people, the machines they work with, unless they're techs, are not going to be able to process that
Mhm.
effectively. Um, what you're going to be way more error likely if you're having to deal with that kind of record count, and there's just no way you're efficient. But if you're dealing with a small data set, like, I don't know, 25 or 30,000 something records, maybe, like, you could probably get away with leveraging spreadsheets and then adopting tools like Power Query and Power BI. Again, those
Okay.
tools allow us to model data,
Model data, right?
not unlike how we model data in databases, right? So we call them table relationships or query joins. Power BI and Power Query call them models, right? It's all the same
Right,
thing. You're
right,
hooking two individual sets of data. So it's
right.
also very specific. Like, it's not. I think one thing that's important is it's not always one answer. Like, maybe it will work for you
Okay.
for a little bit longer, but then if you've got a growth plan and you're trying to get analytic, okay, here you go. You're reviewing last week's information and you're already in this week. That's like building your company by looking in the rear view mirror every day. Like,
Hmm.
you got to be able to look forward. So if you're trying to be forward focused and you're 2 weeks or 1 month behind on your reporting, and you're not closer to real time, then you've got to figure out how to get that data in real time. And sometimes that's a mix of spreadsheets and a mix of database
Yeah.
technology.
Okay.
So that would be something I would look at, is how old are your reports by the time you're actually trying to make decisions on them? Because
All
if you're
right.
getting them a month later, that's a disaster and not
Right.
necessary in today's world.
Right. So Tom is asking me where you get Excel or Power BI apparel. I had this. I designed this and made it like all of my other Excel apparel. Um, so that's how you get it. Is you design it and have it made.
Oh, yes.
So
So, let's see.
uh,
I think it's
uh,
Javier. I hope I said that right. If I butchered it, I'm so sorry. It also depends on concurrence, amount of users, unavailability, frequency of update, version control is also important.
okay.
Absolutely,
All right.
absolutely.
So this is when I start thinking about databases. Is or maybe a database would be more appropriate. Uh, is when multiple people in different places need to pull from the same data set.
Yes.
Okay,
Hard yes.
that is really hard in Excel because everything you were talking about, about the size of data and everything, and a lot of us work with more than 25,000, a hundred
Mhm.
thousand, a half
Mhm.
million rows
Mhm.
of data in Excel. So Excel can handle up to 1.08 million. And then there have been demos of over a billion if you leverage Power Query.
Uh-huh.
Um, so the size of the data, I don't know how many people actually use that much data.
I
I've
think
heard from
probably
people.
more, yeah, probably more than even realize it. I mean, if
I
part of
wonder.
your everyday life is saying, "Hey, Carol, get out of the spreadsheet. I need to make an update."
uh,
You already need to be thinking about, like, our next plan for next year is to figure out how to take our spreadsheets and take the best things from our spreadsheets and design and develop a database. It's
And
not
then you
as
know what?
hard as
Then you know
people think it
what?
is.
Okay, then let me tell you this is back when I did have those calling somebody saying, "Hey, get out of the spreadsheet." If they would have implemented a database, that would have been so disempowering because then I'm gonna have this little prompt and I'm gonna have to know what to type in there. I can't go in there and just look at something. That's all I needed to do. I didn't need to update anything. I just needed to look at something.
Okay, so here we're back to that data challenge of access to
Hmm.
data, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so you've heard people talk about data warehouses, right? So I basically and this is not, I'm just simplifying this to the most ridiculous level. Basically, you have this huge database and it has a ton of meaningful and non-meaningful information, and people are
Mhm.
needing this information. And so at some point, somebody said, hey, let's just create another database that has everything already tied together for everybody and throw it out and just give people access to what they need. And oh, by the way, let's call it a data warehouse. That's an oversimplification of a really complicated process, but right. So it could be like if your DBAs are dying over there in survival mode because they're pushing data out to people all the time and the requests are getting higher and higher and higher and more intense, then maybe you don't need to recreate the database. Maybe you need to look at your governance plan and figure
Mm,
out what can
mm,
you implement in the database technology stack that would allow people more access to information, and you can control who gets what information. I mean, I totally get it. We have to protect our information because we have to protect our people that we're enclosing in all that information. But at the same time, if you're asking people to report, you need to give them access to the information they need in some form. And database tools or data, I'll say database, data tools in every case sit on top of data.
mhm,
Excel sits on top of data. So,
mhm.
like it used to be, you had to do everything through ODBC connections. That's not really true, but it's close. And now, like I can go tap directly to my Salesforce data if I have the permissions, or I can export it out and work with it. So I developed a Excel and Access course starting in versions 2013 to help people survive the requests they were getting, because if they're not using database technologies, they could be spending their whole week just trying to build a report that's a month old.
Mhm.
So we have a couple of different challenges. One, you have everything locked down, you don't let anybody have anything. So the downside to that is you're going to have, you know, mad people who don't have the access to the data, and you're not going to get the reports that you need. So
Right.
you got to figure out what in the database technologies do you need to implement, and how do you control that. But that again comes up to the leadership level and the data
Well,
governance teams to
but
provide that access.
then there is still also having the access, but not the skill.
Oh yeah, come on, talk to me about
That's
it.
the thing is that's when these database versus spreadsheet battles come up on Twitter or wherever or LinkedIn, I always go back to why my Excel skill became a thing. There was crap in the database. Um, it took forever to get the DBA to get me something, and maybe it took 2 days for him to get it. And then I immediately figure out it's not what I need. I need something else. I got to wait 2 or 3 days. And
Yeah,
if month end is happening, I might have to wait more than a week.
yeah,
But I had Excel there. But then I'm also talking about one guy and an ad hoc need.
yeah.
I'm not talking about, 10 people all over the place, and some big old mountain of data. And it's funny to me, 'cause I met somebody, he dealt with credit card transactions, and he could get over 1 billion lines of data a day.
Yeah.
That was not going in Excel. But I think Bill Jelen did say something about a guy in Trinidad, maybe, who was dealing with data that size somehow in Excel. I don't know. I'd need to find out from Bill about that. But typically, no, you're not going to do that in Excel.
Uh, no, and again, like so at some point, data was not just for the IT team and the technical
Hmm.
department. It
Hmm.
it data became available and some at a minimum an export. Used to be tools really didn't even export to anything but CSV. Now, like all tools, somehow or other you can get it out of there. But like if you're dealing with a huge record set, like you got to have a powerful machine.
Hmm.
You've got to have the right type of software. Like again, Power Query, it does the way it processes information. And I'm not like a guts person, but the way it processes information is a lot faster and quicker. But as well as I know, like we're talking about database technologies here, and Power Query to me is a database technology. It's been around for 6 years, and we still can't get people to like be, understanding that it's there for them to use
There,
it.
yes, and there's some very basic things in there, and with my LinkedIn courses, like my weekly challenges, I feel like it is necessary to expose even beginners to Power Query.
Oh, for real, for
Yes,
real,
even
for
just
real.
splitting columns, but
Yeah,
those joins, yes,
yeah,
those joins were hard to get my mind around, but once I got them, oh baby,
yeah.
it could keep things so much leaner. I didn't have to make one big old table with all these repeats in it. It is all just craziness. Was I can have a little piece here and a lot of stuff here and
Mm-hmm.
join them, and then Power Query would treat them as if they were one, or a data model. And then data models can be tough to get, where you think about a primary key and a foreign key,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
what happens when you get that backwards one to many relationship, all that kind of stuff you got to get. But once you get it, damn, things are so much more
Oh, for
exciting.
real, for real.
Yeah.
I'm going to shout out Albert's comment here. I read it
All right.
earlier. He was saying the worst thing about SQL joins is the fact that we try to use Venn diagram. Like, I just want to almost just hug you through the screen for saying that. Like, not everybody processes information through a Venn diagram on relationships. I can assure you that if you are using VLOOKUPs, then your leap to understanding joins is not going to be as bad as you think. It is one of the hardest concepts of all earth to get as a data person. So I just think you got to just keep looking for join examples. Like I said, Michael, I would be like, okay, Michael, I heard you, but I didn't hear you. Give me another example. But then there was
But
at some point, like you have to like get your hands in it for the light bulb to pop off.
yeah, and I like the examples that I've come up with when I've taught these joins.
Yep.
And I do use Venn diagrams, but I introduce them later. I propose something, say, okay, we've got two different data sets, and there can be some records on both. Okay, so now we've got a building, and we've
Mm-hmm.
got people who are residents, and then people who are owners. And there are a few people who are owners who live there. So
Yep.
now let's introduce the Venn diagram, and then we can see Jody is the inner join, which means what? Jody owns and Jody lives here.
Yep.
And then what about Pete? Pete owns but does not live here.
Yep.
So through basic examples like that, I feel like it's been helpful.
Sure. And again, it's like if you're like, so you have to be told about joins, introduced to joins, told about joins again, more joins, then some more joins, and then a little bit more joins, and you got to work with some joins, and then you just have to be practical. Again, like a VLOOKUP is a form of join.
Hmm.
Queries and table relationships. We're joining like fields together. And then at some point, the Venn diagrams do make sense. But like if you just start out with a Venn diagram and you're not touching any data on both sides, it is very
Hmm.
complicated to understand them. But I can
Hmm.
attest to your join lessons because I will teach joins in our boot camp, and then they'll see your joins lesson. They'll be like, Oz told me everything about joins. And I'm like, what the heck? Okay. Like I'm about to stop showing Oz up in my class because everybody
Oh,
likes Oz better than me. But no, just kidding. No, but again, I think it's exposure to it, and you just can't get enough of that. Let me pull through these.
all right, all right.
Okay, so Claudia put one up here, and let's see. Cassandra said, "Hey, I'm currently getting into data analytics. Currently learning Tableau at the moment. Familiar with Excel. Okay, should I be okay? So here's my opinion on whether you should learn
I
Access.
was trying to. I read really
Oh,
slow.
sorry.
Been
So,
using it as my main application
mhm,
most over 20 years. Should I be
mhm,
learning access? Okay, go
yeah,
ahead. Because I have an answer to that too. Go ahead.
yeah. No,
She asked
I
you, not
just
me.
yeah,
Okay.
I think we probably have two separate answers here. There is
Why? Thank you, Albert.
I have a single reason why I think data workers should spend a little bit of time learning something like databases and access is because it has all of the core functionality that you'll find conceptually in all major data systems. So it's got tables, it's got queries. So if you can understand how to review those tables and queries and even design a table or two and query those tables, then it helps you to interpret the design structures of other systems that may be larger and bigger, but because they look on the inside the same. And so I know for us, we start by teaching access databases, not because we want to teach a bunch of people how to build access databases, but because they're going to be looking at database structures as analysts, and they're going to be peering through those structures through different tools. So I don't think it hurts to learn a little bit. Like, do you have to be a DBA? No. Do you have to be a data engineer or an architect? No. But will it help you to understand what people are putting together for you? Yes. So my vote is it's not going to hurt you to learn a little bit about it.
Right.
Okay, Oz.
And then only speaking from experience and my stories is I did take uh an access day long workshop. Pretty cool. But then when I went out in the world, I'm dealing with all of these small companies. Sometimes the company is one person. They've got Excel. And I did want to get into databases, but then the work to do it didn't show up. Now, there was one project I had where a guy had database data and a bunch of data in PDFs, and he needed it. And they had gotten to a place in the company where they decided they could no longer work off of spreadsheets. It started out as one or two people in the company, and
Mm,
then it grows out to five people and interns, and they all have different data needs. They were bringing in a database, but all that data from all those other places need to be swept together, deduped, made consistent. That was why I was hired. And then some more data came. So I passed my stuff off to the database guy. He started building, and then more data came in, and he refused to clean it. He asked for permission to bring me back in to clean that new data. And I figured he made way more than me, but he wasn't about cleaning no data.
yeah, yeah. Well, I
So,
don't yeah,
yeah,
we're never gonna get away from having to clean data
right,
because,
right,
we're gonna always have more data than what we actually need for whatever specific,
hmm,
report or
yeah,
problem we're trying to solve. So, and then there's so much data that gets generated inside of a data system, like
hmm,
timestamps and non-meaningful record information,
right,
and we're gonna always be cleaning those out.
yeah,
But I think that we're really doing more databasing than what we like to admit when we're joining information together. We're pulling it together for reporting. We're pivoting it in pivot table tools like and again, we're sitting on top of data systems. Again, if you can get
right,
it out, you can work with it and just knowing what's available in all of the tools. But there are pros and cons to every tool. And as part of the speaker brief, we wrote out some of the pros and cons. And I think Oz, is it okay if I show my
yeah,
pros and cons
yeah.
list
Go ahead,
here?
go ahead.
All right, let me get it
All right.
set up here.
Thanks, LinkedIn user. LinkedIn user. I don't know why it doesn't show the person's name. It says that my Power Query course was super helpful for learning joins. Yeah, once you get joins, you are on your way.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was that was what unlocked my whole
yeah,
life was understanding joins. All right, let me share my
share it. Hit
screen
us.
here. And I'll have Claudia. Let's see, is that going to share? Oh no. It's just telling me I'm not responding.
Mhm.
Can you hear me, Oz?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, maybe it's not gonna let me do it. Don't close. Don't go away.
But tell us.
Okay,
Just read
so
it out for us.
I'll
Yeah.
read it out. So pros and cons of databases. All right, one of the biggest cons is they can be designed by anyone, and sometimes
Hmm.
really poorly. There are a lot of theories about proper database design. So if you're designing one, you know nothing about design theory and relational databases, you should probably explore that. Not all databases have every single tool that you'll actually need. Sometimes they're just built to capture data without a lot of thought on reporting on that data after the fact,
Wow.
and they can be expensive. But some of the pros is that you can build effective database solutions with technology starting at almost any level. Um, they do make reporting possible across multiple data points. They typically hold varying amounts of data depending on the tool. So if you don't have a lot of data or you have some data, you could choose the right tool for how much data you have. And they can be structured or unstructured. Unstructured scares me a little bit. And they really can be affordable if you're talking to people who know how to design databases. Okay. And then we have some pros and cons of spreadsheets. My first con is there one? I love all of the spreadsheets. They're not databases, but they're often made to act like a database. And my example there is like lipstick on a pig. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig underneath
Still
there.
a pig. Yep.
They can be programmed. That's a con simply because people will program them to do things that if they just looked at it kind of hard, they would realize they're just making it a database where that's already all programmed for us. And when the solution developed creates a single set of information, making it more complicated to report collectively on things. The pro is, again, they can be programmed and provide valuable functionality. Excel Power Query, again, it's a game changer. If you don't know anything about it, you should watch it. You should watch Oz's Getting Transformed course. It's widely available. Spreadsheets are available to
Yeah.
everybody. It's either Excel or Google Spreadsheets or Open Office, whatever. And then the most key important pro to me about spreadsheets is that they are meant to work with data. That's what they do. So I think that's pretty exciting. Good list of pros and cons. So Claudia, if you haven't posted those, she can post those.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my pros and
All right.
cons on there. I'm assuming we're still live. My screen is completely frozen, so I don't
It's
know,
frozen.
Oz. It's
Yeah, it
yeah,
says live.
yeah, it's completely frozen. I can't see comments, and I'm scared to touch it too much.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a last comment. Albert says it looks like I'm drinking egg yolks like Rocky. Because I was drinking tangerine juice. Wow. So just thinking about your list of pros and cons. Um, wow, I'm still going back to when when can you really no longer make a spreadsheet work? And then when I think about that company, and I hadn't thought about that before this, was that company that had grown into multiple people and their interns, and they all need access to the same data source,
Yeah,
but not in the same ways.
right.
That gets really, really hard with Excel, and they are doing a whole lot with collaboration. Um, but that's some messy stuff.
Yeah. Well, what's scary to me is like when people have the same information in 15 different Excel files and 15 different approaches to the
Right.
information. And then somebody's making a decision on somebody's information, and then they look at somebody else's set of this allegedly the same information, and they're like, this isn't the same. And so if you want some consistency in your data, you can't have 15 different spreadsheets that are allegedly supposed to stay the same. That it's overwhelming for humans to even possibly deal with that. And then, okay, so somebody says, oh, yeah, so and so called, data has to be updated. And then everybody's got to go to where they're supposed to go and make their updates. I mean, that's just not even realistic, nor
Mhm.
is it necessary. Like, again, you don't have to like go change your whole world over. You don't have to replace what you're doing, but you might find that there are database technologies that you can implement to make it better than it is today. And again, like if you're in leadership and you go, man, this used to really work well for us, but we've grown, that is usually a time where you need to start exploring what your options are. And
Mhm.
then don't like again, don't go out hard and fast to be like, I need to go implement a Microsoft SQL Server database. I need a data mart, I need a data warehouse, I need all this reporting and business because then that's overwhelming. Like, and you may not need all that. Just one little bite of the elephant at a time as you're
Mhm.
making those decisions. And then again, like work with your people, like educate the people that are actually working with the data and get their feedback to see what are they actually doing with it. So when you're seeking out what options you're going to implement for a database, you sort of know what everybody's doing already. So
Man, this is you just taking me back to all kinds of stuff. 'Cause I remember when this company was going to implement Oracle and have all these reports coming out of it, and then these people constantly coming to my desk asking me how the commissions work,
yeah,
and then they want to have me test the report that came out, and then I would tell them about these ad hoc situations that happened infrequently, but they happened enough.
yeah,
And then this person would roll their eyes and huff and then go back and come back a few weeks later. How about this? Well,
mm-hmm,
no, that's not entirely accurate. Um, and it was just weird to where they were putting this stuff in this hole, this box called a database somewhere that I couldn't see. I couldn't see the numbers. I couldn't see the
yeah,
calculations. Um, I liked just hold the stuff there. I'll pull out what I need and create the reports that I need.
that's
How about
great.
that?
Yep, yep. Yeah, I'm a fan of that. I think we need
Hmm.
databases to hold the information, and we need database technologies in our data tools to help us process that information. And
Hmm.
we need to figure out ways to pass data to people securely so that they can
Hmm.
do what we're asking them to
Securely.
do. Yeah. So there's a it's a whole lot going into that. I just don't think we can just say, it's always a spreadsheet, it's always a database, it's always this, it's
Right.
always that. Anytime somebody has this idea that it's just always this, and I'm like, okay, you're going to always end dissatisfied. A database
Hmm.
does not solve your problem.
Thank you.
Data
Thank
solves
you.
your problem. Databases
Data.
do not solve your problem. It's
Good, useful data.
yeah, good useful data, and there is a gazillion different ways to approach how you design your data, how you structure your data, how you get through with stopgap solutions until you get there. But there's
Yeah.
just yeah, and the idea that one database is going to solve all the problems of the company. No, no, no. You're going to have multiple sets of data as a part of specialized tools. Again, back to the warehouse
Wow.
conversation, like every bit of it's connected somehow, but it's all in different places, and the warehouse lets us have it all and then pass it securely to people. So it could be that you already have everything you need, you just missing that one middle piece that
Mhm.
allows people to access the information. So yeah, again, just remain tools agnostic. Don't always buy the sales pitch. That's
Okay.
it's gonna solve
All
our
right.
problem. This whole thing's gonna solve every problem, and it's gonna drive your car and put you to bed at night. No,
Yeah.
it's not. There's gonna always be something that you need that you weren't thinking of, or you didn't need it when you got these things implemented. So, being flexible and And just again,
Right.
keeping a very data literate population cannot hurt you at all.
And I appreciate that being data agnostic, right? Because
Hmm.
I don't want to push Excel on people. And when these debates come up, I don't try to look match for match. Oh, you said a database can do this. Well, I can do this in Excel. Well, that's not the point, because serving the people who have to live with the consequences of what we do or don't do with the data, they're the ones who matter. So they don't care if the stuff is in a spiral notebook or in a database or in Excel or written on the wall, as long as it's working and it's accurate. Um, so it is hard to pin down when exactly something should is past the blurry line
Hmm.
and you need a database. It's not so easy.
Yeah. And maybe you already have the database. You know what I mean? You may already have the database, you just don't have the access to the information to leverage the data tools.
And
So,
and and as I've seen, as one company, they had a database and nobody used it. They kept using Excel.
yep.
They just had no interest.
Yeah, that and that's yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's that's a that's a symptom of, hey, this database is going to solve all of the world's problems. And then it
Right.
really didn't solve all the world's problems, and your people
No,
are
I
still
didn't.
doing the same things that they did before, and now they've got another piece involved in their everyday work life. So when you're implementing a data technology, whether it be a database or a different type of like business intelligence tool, like if you're not having some preliminary conversations with the people in your
Hmm.
organization who are touching that data to figure out what they're doing,
Right.
you're just gonna like you're not gonna be as successful as you would be had you had those conversations with the people actually doing the data work that you're asking them to do.
They spent a bunch of money and time and created a bunch of agitation.
Oh yeah, well,
So
I've made a living on people designing databases that then didn't provide the reporting. So, yeah, I mean, give me a data set, give me database tables, I'll figure out how to make it report, right? So, I do know that it happens and people end up spending way more money on those other vendors than they do with us, but we're the ones solving their problem, and we're not solving it by replacing what they put in. We're solving the problem by bringing our toolbox and
mhm,
leveraging everything in it. I mean, oh my God, I'll say it again. A carpenter doesn't show up to do a job and bring just a hammer. He brings everything, or they bring everything in their toolbox so that they can solve a problem. And I think as data workers, if you're listening, you need to build a solid set of tools in your toolbox and be
mhm.
prepared. Be prepared for anything.
Yeah, and be prepared for anything, and that includes the budget, the constraints that you show up and find. Um, because a lot of the situations I've been in is I show up and Excel is the only option. They aren't talking about databases or whatever. And then there is, I want to blow up what they have and recreate it in Power Query. And they say, nope,
Yep.
we've been looking at this spreadsheet this way for so long. And we get that it can be more efficient and accurate, but this is how it is.
Yeah.
And so we just have to accept that. And fortunately, I would have enough tools in my Excel toolbox to adjust to what they needed and not try to force my way, the right way,
Oh,
on
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
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 So
There's a million ways to go about all of it. So, yeah, if
yeah,
you start thinking, if you're a consultant and it's like you're trying to fit everything into what you sell, well, you don't sell
no,
everything. So
no,
you got to be
no.
really careful about that. And again, expanding your toolbox will only help you. All right,
So I
Oz.
wonder.
Well, I'm showing it's almost 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So got to close this thing out.
All right. Cool.
What's your final thoughts?
I've enjoyed this because what I've gotten out of it is there is no right and wrong clear answer here. there's so many variables. Um, Databases and spreadsheets have their place, and they can act like one another. Um, but then when you need absolutely one or the other, there's too much to decide. Too much needs to go into that answer. So, for those database folks who want to start that battle up, not here, not today.
Yeah, let's not have a battle. I think it's databases do what databases do, data technologies and spreadsheets do what data technologies and spreadsheets do, and they are meant to work together in harmony. And if
Mhm.
you're out of harmony, then maybe your first
You got
step is to get
dissonance. You
yeah,
have dissonance.
get back in
Yes.
get back in tune and
Yeah.
start by talking to the people who are actually touching the data and figure out like what are their pain points and what are they doing. And if you're watching and you're trying to figure out what are your next steps, you can never get too much on Excel. You should explore a little bit with access databases. If you like access databases, your next step is going to be explore SQL and understand SQL as a language and understand it's a language of data and databases. So yeah,
All right.
you can't hurt to learn how to design one, especially if you're going to be looking at ones that have been designed. So, all
Right. All right.
right. Well,
Cool.
Oz,
Thanks everybody.
yeah,
Thanks,
thanks for
Robin.
doing this with me again, and
Yep.
we'll put it out on the podcast channels, and we'll see you all next time.
Next time. All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye.